They sold my childhood home behind my back, used my trust fund to throw my brother a poolside wedding, and told me I never belonged here. So I bought the entire street and made sure they'd never forget who they erased. I hadn't planned to step foot back in Oak Hill, not after what they did, not after the voicemail, not after my name was scrubbed from every document like I'd never existed. But here I am, standing just outside the white tent fluttering on the manicured lawn of 113 Crescent Avenue. My childhood home. The house with the cracked second step I used to leap over. The tree I fell out of when I was 8. The swing my father hung with his bare hands before he got too tired to care. They're auctioning it off today, and I came to watch them do it. I'm dressed simply. Black slacks, a pressed coat, boots that click lightly against the pavement. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, but heads still turn. Because I don't belong here anymore, not according to them. I'm a ghost now. A memory rewritten. I step closer to the tent's edge. My eyes drift to the porch, now painted a smug shade of white. Fresh, clean, deceitful. This was supposed to be mine. Years ago, I offered to buy it outright. Cash, no mortgage. Jocelyn said she'd think about it. What she really meant was, let's wait until your brother needs another handout. Is that her? A voice whispers near the canapes. Yes, it is. Elaine Bennett, 43. The disappointment, the black sheep, the one who left the family business and didn't come crawling back. My once dark hair is now flecked with silver. Streaks earned through stress, silence, and survival. I carry it with pride. I earned every line on my face. And there they are. Jocelyn, Mother of the Year in her pearl-set blazer, clutching a mimosa like it's a weapon. She's laughing too loud, that high society trill that always makes my stomach churn. Mark, my brother, sleeves rolled, sunglasses perched in his slicked back hair. He's got that same overconfident smirk he wore when he failed out of college, and somehow landed a VP title anyway. And clinging to his side is Karen, the second wife, 10 years younger, already acting like she's the matriarch of the block. I scan the crowd. They haven't seen me yet. Of course they haven't. They don't look for ghosts. A young couple stands near the auctioneer's table, bright-eyed, hopeful. The woman points to the upstairs window with excitement. That used to be my bedroom. I wonder if they'll keep the skylight. I wonder if they'll smell the lavender soap I used to press into the windowsill when I was 16, hoping it would scent the wind. Then I hear it. The voice that carved me hollow. We needed the money. And you never really fit into the neighborhood anyway. That was Jocelyn's voicemail, a 6-second severance of maternal bond. She left it the day after the sale. No apology. No conversation. Just that. As if my entire childhood, my entire existence, was an unfortunate oversight in her curated life. She took my trust fund, $187,000 that was left to me by my grandmother, and used it to pay for Mark and Karen's wedding. A backyard gala with an open bar and imported orchids. Then she used what was left to install a pool, and now they're flipping the last thing I ever loved. The auctioneer clears his throat. Opening bid at $320,000. Mark raises a paddle. Karen giggles and kisses his cheek. That's when Jocelyn sees me, her eyes narrow. Her drink pauses midair. I don't move. I don't flinch. She leans over to Mark, whispering fast. He turns. Smirks. He waves, like I'm some awkward girl from high school they bumped into at a gas station. That wave lights something inside me. Not anger. Precision. I step into the tent, not to bid, not to interrupt, just to be seen, to let them feel the weight of what they threw away. The crowd quiets as I walk past. A few older neighbors murmur my name. One woman gasps. Elaine? Elaine? Bennett? I nod once, calm, measured, controlled. Jocelyn straightens her blazer. Her jaw tightens. Good. They wanted to erase me. But you can't erase a root that runs deeper than the house it grew in. This is where it begins. Not with a scream, not with a fight, with presence, and I'm not leaving this time. They think the worst thing they ever did was sell the house. But that wasn't it. The worst thing they did was shove a 19-year-old girl out the door without so much as a coat or a plan, because she said no. No to the family firm. No to the fake smiles, backdoor deals, and legacy soaked in arrogance. They called it ungrateful. I called it survival. I remember the sound the door made when it shut behind me. Clean, final. No slamming, no drama. Just the quiet click of dismissal. That kind of silence leaves a scar. For the first 2 nights, I slept in the back seat of my old Civic, parked behind the library. The windows fogged with my breath. The heater barely worked. I remember clutching my duffel bag like a lifeline, trying to ignore the way hunger gnawed at the edges of my body. I still had my ID, a half-dead phone, and $23 in my pocket. That was the extent of my net worth. By week 2, I'd found a night shift at a 24-hour design print shop. It paid just enough for gas and gas station food. My hands were blistered from loading ink cartridges and folding promotional flyers for people who'd never know my name. I didn't tell anyone I was sleeping in the employee parking lot. Pride is a funny thing. It'll keep you alive just long enough to make something of yourself. 6 months later, I found a flyer for an adult learner scholarship taped to the community board. I scanned it during my 10-minute lunch break, surrounded by vending machines and buzzing fluorescents. The application was due in 3 days. I wrote the essay on my phone, fingers cramping, heart pounding. It started like this. I have nothing left to lose, and that might be my greatest advantage. Somehow it worked. By 21, I was in night classes for business design. By 25, I was managing branding accounts for a regional development firm. By 33, I was running my own agency. By 38, I had my first 4 properties, all in neighborhoods like the UAD one I grew up in. The kind people like my family called transitioning, when they wanted to raise rent without guilt. I kept my name out of it. No press, no plaques, just a silent LLC and results that spoke for themselves. I wasn't chasing revenge. I was building what I never had. Stability, ownership, legacy. Brick by brick, deed by deed, title by title. By 43, I owned 7 properties on Crescent Avenue. Let that sink in. The Bennett family's problem child owns more of the block than anyone. 2 rentals, 1 renovated duplex, the small park across the street where I learned to ride my bike, the old Presbyterian church on the corner, abandoned for a decade, and now restored with fresh windows and warm light. They didn't know of course. People like Jocelyn don't look past their own mirrors. They don't check deeds unless it benefits them. They assumed I had vanished into obscurity. A failed artist. A barista. A cautionary tale. Good. Let them think that. Let them believe they won. Because I wasn't coming back for their pity, their praise, or their pathetic apologies. I came back to restore something they were never capable of understanding. Roots, legacy, stewardship. The kind of power that doesn't need headlines or handshakes. I did it in silence. I did it with precision. And I did it with nothing but the lessons they tried to burn out of me. You can't inherit integrity. You have to earn it. And while they were trading family for granite countertops, I was rewriting the rules. 1 property, 1 loan, 1 contract. At a time. They think they know who I am. But the woman standing in their old neighborhood, the one with silver streaks in her hair and steel in her spine, she's the storm they never saw coming. The voicemail came in just past 7 p.m., shaky and trembling. Elaine, sweetheart, it's Beatrice. I'm so sorry to bother you, but they're talking about raising the rent again. Mark said something about progress and luxury, zoning. I don't know where I'll go if I have to leave. I don't know what to do. Beatrice, the woman who gave me warm apple bread after school, who watered our roses when Jocelyn was too busy with book club martinis. She's lived on Crescent Avenue since 1962, raised 2 sons here, lost a husband to cancer here, watched the world change around her, but never expected the people closest to her to sell her out for profit. I felt the chill first, not rage, disbelief. And then a calm, bone-deep certainty. They were doing it again. Mark and Jocelyn had petitioned a zoning change under the guise of revitalization. In reality, it was a plan to bulldoze character and evict legacy. They wanted to line the street with luxury townhomes, push out the seniors on fixed incomes, and erase the last fragments of the community they didn't think was worth preserving. They thought I wouldn't notice. But I did, and I wasn't going to let them finish what they started. The HOA meeting was held in the Oak Hill Community Hall, a boxy building with faded siding and bad lighting. But everyone in the neighborhood knew. It was sacred ground. Birthdays, funerals, protests, reunions. It held our history in its scuffed floors and crooked picture frames. I walked in wearing a tailored black coat, no jewelry, hair swept back into a low twist. No flash, no noise, just presence. In my hand, a simple gray folder. No logos, no drama. The room hushed slightly when I entered. Familiar faces turned. Beatrice smiled, eyes wet. She squeezed my hand as I passed. Jocelyn, seated front and center, arched one perfectly drawn eyebrow. Mark gave a smug little nod. Karen whispered something behind her manicured hand. I didn't react. I waited. Then, when the board chair opened the floor, I stood. As the majority property owner on this street, I'd like to speak. Silence dropped like a curtain. I walked to the front, heels echoing softly on the hardwood. I opened the folder and pulled out the documents one by one, laying them down with calm precision. These are the deeds to the 7 properties currently registered under Oak Haven Holdings, LLC. This is the majority stake in Crescent Avenue. I also own the adjacent lots through 2 separate investment vehicles, which means... I looked up, right at Jocelyn. The zoning request is null. I'm reversing it. Her smile slipped. Mark coughed. You can't just reverse. Actually, I cut in smoothly. As the primary stakeholder and property steward, I can, and I am. I lifted a final document from the folder. I'm also placing protective covenants on these properties to prevent displacement. These homes, these families, will not be evicted, not under my watch. The air shifted, not chaos. Not cheers, just a slow, rolling wave of realization. Power had changed hands, quietly, legally, permanently. Karen leaned forward, voice sugar-slick and acidic. You've always had a way of making things about you, Elaine. I turned to her, expression steady. No, I'm making it about them. The people you forgot while chasing fountains and granite countertops. Beatrice looked like she might cry. A few heads nodded. Even the board chair straightened with a new kind of respect. Jocelyn stared at me like she was seeing something foreign. Not a daughter. Not a problem. A reckoning. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to gloat. Because in that moment, every whisper they'd ever spoken about me, every insult, every dismissal, collapsed under the weight of undeniable truth. I hadn't come to fight. I came to protect what they tried to bury. The old church on the corner of Crescent and Maple hadn't held a Sunday sermon in over 15 years. But that night, it was full. The wooden pews creaked with weight they hadn't carried in decades. People sat shoulder to shoulder, retired, teachers, former mechanics, widows with careful curls, parents with kids on their laps. The same neighbors who watched me grow up behind white shutters and soft glances. The same ones who had looked away when the Bennets closed the door on me. Not tonight. Tonight, the lights burned bright overhead, and I stood at the front, not as a victim. Not as a girl forgotten, but as the woman holding the truth. I didn't bring microphones. I didn't need a podium. Just a long folding table and 3 neat stacks of documents. One labeled Trust Fund Records, one marked Zoning and Ownership, Transfers, and one simply titled Displacement Forecast. I let the room settle. Then I stepped forward and spoke, not with fury but with force. Most of you know me. Or at least, you knew the girl I used to be. You saw me ride my bike down Crescent Avenue. You waved at my father when he watered the lawn. You smelled my mother's perfume when she passed you at the market. But what you didn't see was the cost, the choices, the lies, the silence. I looked toward the second row. Jocelyn sat stiff as marble in her mauve silk suit, lips pursed, jaw clenched. Mark, beside her, fidgeted, his knee bouncing under the pew like a guilty drumbeat. Karen, of course, didn't show. I lifted the first document. This is a record of the trust fund left to me by my grandmother, Margaret Hale. It was intended to fund my education and secure a home of my own. But instead, it was drained, transferred, illegally by Jocelyn Bennett into a personal account and then funneled into renovations for Mark's wedding estate. The guest list was longer than the paper trail, but not by much. Gasps rippled through the room. Beatrice covered her mouth. I set the next folder down. This is proof of the rezoning petition Jocelyn and Mark submitted to the city council last year. Under the guise of revitalization, they plan to evict 6 elderly tenants and demolish 3 historic homes, all in the name of progress, all for profit. Mark stood suddenly, voice cracking. You think this makes you a hero? This is business, Elaine. That's how the world works. I looked at him, really looked, and saw the boy he used to be, always getting away with it. You're right, I said. It is business, which is why the lawsuits being filed tomorrow morning will go through civil court and the state ethics board. I'm not here to make a scene. I'm here to take back what's mine and protect what's theirs. I turned back to the crowd. You deserve to know what's happening in your own neighborhood. You deserve to stay in the homes you built, not be priced out by the children of people who forgot how this street was raised. Then I looked Jocelyn in the eyes, not with hatred, not even anger, just truth. You didn't just sell a house. You sold history. You sold me. She flinched, just barely. But I saw it, the first crack in that glass facade she'd spent 40 years polishing. I didn't need to scream. I didn't cry, because in that moment, my presence alone was louder than every lie they ever told. Behind me, 2 of my lawyers stepped forward and quietly handed sealed notices to Mark and Jocelyn. Motions to investigate the misappropriation of trust funds. A request to audit Mark's development firm. They paled. I heard whispers, murmurs of vindication. Not for me. For the neighborhood. Mark's company is leveraged, one man said behind me. She's going to bury them, whispered another. No, I'm going to reveal them. The damage they did, that was the real rot. All I'm doing now is pulling back the wallpaper. The sun was just beginning to sink when I saw her. Beatrice, standing at the edge of the newly restored park, her cane resting against the iron fence, her cardigan fluttering like a flag in the breeze. The same park where I scraped my knees, built stick forts, kissed a boy I never told my mother about. She turned as I approached, eyes soft and shining beneath her glasses. Her voice, raspy with age but unwavering, broke through the quiet like a benediction. You remind me of your grandmother. Quiet backbone. She'd be proud. The breath caught in my throat. I reached for her hand, squeezed it gently. This street raised me, I said, my voice low. I'm just giving it back. Later that evening, under the restored church lights, I stood before the community and announced the Elaine Bennett Housing Trust. Not a brand, not a publicity move, just a promise. Fixed rent rates for elderly tenants, long-term ownership paths for families that had called this place home for decades. A guarantee that no one would be pushed out for the sake of imported stone and curated aesthetics. The applause was warm, not explosive, not grand. Just honest, human. And that meant more than any victory speech ever could. I got the call 2 days later. Jocelyn. For a moment, I considered letting it ring out, letting silence be the last thing between us. But I answered, out of curiosity. Maybe closure. She didn't cry. Jocelyn never cried, but her voice, it wasn't polished. It cracked at the edges. Elaine, I know who you are, I interrupted. You don't need to explain. There was a pause. Then she said it. You were always stronger than we gave you credit for. A compliment, coded in regret. I didn't respond right away. Just stared out the window at the trees lining Crescent Avenue, the same ones Jocelyn once wanted cut down for a better view. You didn't break me, I said finally. You freed me. I hung up, not in anger, but in peace. The house sits quietly now. My childhood home, fully restored, but no longer mine to live in. I donated it to the neighborhood board to be turned into a community archive and creative space. Place for storytelling, art, memory. Because some places deserve to grow beyond the pain they were built on. That evening, I sat on the porch steps, fingers brushing the newly sanded railing. The same rail I clung to as a child, waiting for someone to tell me I belonged. A little girl zipped past on a pink scooter, helmet askew, laughter trailing behind her. She turned and waved. I smiled, nodded once. The street was safe now. Not perfect, but protected. And me? I didn't need to start over. I just needed to make sure no one else had to. I looked at the sky. Soft blue fading into gold. I'm not here to relive the past, I whispered to no one. I'm here to protect the future. And, for the first time in years, I believed it.